Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, November the 1st, 2024. So today there is a new moon in Scorpio, and this could have an influence on us, and it is certainly something I need to be looking at. And there are certain people in the news who might be particularly influenced by this new moon. So you can see that on the thumbnail I've got JD Vance, who's the candidate to be vice president. He's Donald Trump's running mate. We've also got another prominent Republican, Vivek Ramaswamy. I think this new moon could have an impact on him, and I'll be looking at their charts. I'll also be looking at some other people, for example, Oprah Winfrey. I think this new moon is something she should pay attention to. And, overall, I'll be looking at the general impact of this lunation. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Friday, November the 1st. Usual reminder, if you enjoy the video, I'd be very happy if you were to like it. If you are not subscribed and you enjoy the video, I'd be over the moon if you were to subscribe. Anyway, let's look at what is happening today. So here is the chart for today, Friday, November the 1st, 2024, set for New York at noon. And you can see the new moon. There it is. There's the sun in Scorpio, moon in Scorpio, the moon just separating from the conjunction of the sun. Remember, a new moon by definition is moon conjunct sun. And so the moon, you could argue, is under quite a lot of pressure here because the moon is in Scorpio, which is a sign of its fall. Because the moon is exalted in Taurus, so it's fallen in Scorpio. So traditionally, the moon doesn't work particularly well in Scorpio. And if we're an individual who has the moon in Scorpio, well, we work out how to deal with it, and there are ways to use the moon in Scorpio in a productive and constructive way. But if we want to know in general what it's like when the moon is in Scorpio, what the environment is like with the moon in Scorpio, all things being equal, it would probably be better if it was in a different sign. And the moon is not just in Scorpio, it is conjunct the sun. So you could say that the moon is combust. I mean, this is always going to happen by definition at the time of a new moon. The moon will be conjunct the sun, but I suppose being moon in Scorpio, it's particularly under pressure. So sun and the moon, both in Scorpio, both water signs. There is a lot of emotion flying around. Is it free-flowing emotion? Possibly not, because moon in Scorpio can often have very strong feelings, but doesn't always express those feelings in a sort of a smooth and natural way. And moon in Scorpio has a certain reputation for being brooding, having strong feelings but not really being prepared to reveal them. But then, all of a sudden they can sort of explode. That is one possibility. Although this new moon is trine Saturn, you can see there's Saturn in Pisces. So moon is trine Saturn, the sun is sort of trine Saturn. So I would have said that Saturn in Pisces, I would think does help to stabilize the situation. So maybe we're not going to see explosions with the moon making probably a fairly useful trine to Saturn. And we've got another trine going on. We've got Mercury trine Neptune. We had Mercury trine Neptune yesterday. It started, and today it's exact. So Mercury trine Neptune. This is another trine involving planets and water signs. You've got Mercury in Scorpio, trine Neptune in Pisces. So Mercury is about the way we think, it's about our cognitions, it's about the way we communicate, and then it's trine Neptune. this could be quite fortunate because it may make us sort of more sensitive than usual. We may be able to pick up on things, sort of understand things, and perhaps it's about picking up on things not with the usual channels. I mean, Mercury-Neptune contacts can sometimes be linked with, I suppose, psychic abilities, and that's a way it can work. It can be quite telepathic, but it can just read what's going on. Whether it's body language, the way people are moving, not just what people are saying, but what people are not saying. The silences can tell us so much. So Mercury trine Neptune can pick up on that. Mercury trine Neptune is, of course, also very artistic. Neptune is about the imagination. Mercury trine Neptune allows our imaginations to wander freely. If we are involved in art in any way, shape or form, then this may be a way to express ourselves, to express our imagination. So that Mercury trine Neptune could be useful. I suppose on the downside, if you call it a downside, I suppose if we want to lie and deceive with Mercury trine Neptune, maybe we'll get away with it, at least in the short term. Of course, in the long term, we won't get away with it unless we're lying and deceiving for a very good reason, which is not just about our own ego and our own selfish interests. Now, Venus, I haven't really said so much about Venus recently, but the thing about Venus is that right now it's on a fixed star, and it's on a fixed star, quite a minor fixed star, called, Sabik. So this fixed star called Sabik, which, to be honest, I don't really know anything about, and it's in the constellation of Ophiuchus. But Ophiuchus, when you think of Ophiuchus, you think of that supposed 13th sign. Every now and then, certainly since the 80s, there was always every few years there was a report in the tabloid newspapers about how astrologers have got it wrong, that there's this 13th sign, that the signs astrologers use don't fit with the constellations, and you've got to use Ophiuchus. I suppose Ophiuchus is, it's a bit of a fad, really, isn't it? And it's perhaps shows a sort of a fundamental misunderstanding. If those who get obsessed about Ophiuchus perhaps have a misunderstanding about the way astrologers work and what we look at. Western astrologers use the tropical zodiac. The tropical zodiac is actually based on the seasons. It's not actually based on the constellations. I don't know of any astrologer. I'm sure there are astrologers that use literal constellations to say, well, this planet is in this constellation. Of course, the constellations, it's not just you've got the issue of Ophiuchus. You've got all of the constellations have different sizes in terms of what angle, what slice of the sky they take up. So I suppose some astrologers are completely constellational, but even Vedic astrology, which is sidereal, which is still kind of seasonal, because it takes the regular 12 signs and it applies an ayanamsha to them, which is a sort of a reduction to take into account the precession of the equinoxes. But even then, there is a seasonal element to it. But still, Ophiuchus, it does come up. There's always going to be that occasional article in the tabloids to say that astrologers got their signs wrong. But I think it's just a misunderstanding there that in many cases, because astrologers, we do use, certainly in the West, we use the seasons, and the signs of the zodiac are based on the seasons, or haven't become, well, they originally had a link with the constellations, but as they have been used for the last couple of thousand years since Ptolemy, they're really based on the seasons. The beginning of spring, the spring equinox, that is 0 degrees Aries. Likewise, the beginning of summer, well, high summer, the longest day in the northern hemisphere, 0 degrees Cancer, and so on. Okay, so as far as this fixed star, sorry for rambling a bit there, is one of the brighter stars in the constellation of Ophiuchus, and it is, according to Ptolemy, it is of the nature of Saturn and Venus. It causes wastefulness, lost energy, perverted morals, success in evil deeds. So it's not great, but Vivian Robson, this is what my usual book that I sort of look at, particularly for obscure fixed stars. Vivian Robson, he says, with Venus, musical and artistic ability not very favourable for gain. So maybe there's something a little bit vague about Venus on Sabik, and perhaps if we take Robson's view, there is a sense of waste and not being perhaps very focused. And I don't know about the evil deeds. I don't see any reason why Venus in Sagittarius should be particularly evil, though I suppose Moon is in Scorpio, and that might sort of encourage us to be a bit underhand. And I suppose it supports what I was saying about Mercury trine Neptune being a little bit deceptive, and so perhaps Venus conjunct Sabik can sort of fuel that. But I suppose if we are deceptive with Venus conjunct Sabik, maybe we just won't get away with it. Okay, so let's quickly look at the situation in Australia and New Zealand. So Moon 11 Scorpio, set for noon in New York. If we set the chart for noon in Sydney as a representative of Australia and New Zealand and East Asia, we see that the moon is at 3:44 Scorpio. So in terms of a moon, it doesn't really matter where you are. We definitely have the moon in Scorpio today. Okay, the moon in Scorpio, off the top of my head, the moon will move into Scorpio if you're in Sydney, Australia, around 5 in the morning, something like that. So it's going to 5 or 6 in the morning. I mean, I don't take my word for it, something like that. That's not an exact figure, but really, wherever you are, the moon is certainly in Scorpio. And then we have the heliocentric view. The heliocentric view is, let's just have a look. I haven't prepared this beforehand, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be looking at. So these are the positions of the planets with the sun with the sun in the center of the solar system. And I'm not convinced that there is anything especially dramatic there. There is Venus it's just finished making its trine to Jupiter. So, I thought that Venus trine Jupiter was quite useful, quite productive in terms of getting on with other people. And I know that these are difficult times, but with Venus trine Jupiter, it provided perhaps a little bit of light there. And then Venus, having made its trine to Jupiter, will then start moving to a trine of Mars. So over the next few days, Venus trine Mars, again, quite a nice aspect. I think it is about attractiveness and the way one can be attractive, and perhaps it's saying there's always a way to be attractive, there's always a way to get people's attention, and that's perhaps the message of Venus moving to this trine of moving to this trine of Mars. And I think that is pretty much it. Maybe I've missed something. I probably should have prepared beforehand. 12 Venus. Okay, Mercury. One other aspect. Mercury is starting to make a quincunx to Jupiter. So with Mercury quincunx Jupiter, 150 degree aspect, and it may feel that there's something we want to say, something we want to communicate, but we're perhaps not quite sure how to do it. And in our enthusiasm to get our message across, we might go too far. We might say something that we later regret. That is a possibility. And somehow we have to bring together our ideas, what we're thinking about, with our aspirations. We know we've got something important to say, but what kind of words are we going to be able to use? And we just might somehow use the wrong words because we're trying to explain something that is actually difficult, perhaps even impossible to explain. But it is only Mercury quincunx Jupiter. It's a relatively minor aspect, and remember, Mercury is a fast-moving planet heliocentrically. It moves very quickly, so it's not going to be in orb for very long. Okay, so that's a heliocentric picture, and I now want to look at the astrology for the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is November the 1st, 2024. Aries. So the moon continues to move through Scorpio, and moon moving into Scorpio is perhaps somewhat problematic if you're an Aries, simply because Aries and Scorpio are two signs that don't relate to each other very well. I mean, Aries and Scorpio are so different. Aries is a fire sign. Aries is positive, it's fiery, it's cardinal. Whereas Scorpio, it's a water sign, it's fixed, it's negative. And so with the moon in Scorpio, many Arians may just feel that they are not quite in sync with the rest of the world, and perhaps things are too complicated and too messy, and things are perhaps made more difficult by the fact we've got this new moon. So new moon in Scorpio. And so how do you actually deal with it? Well, new moon in Scorpio is certainly challenging, but it might actually be important. Perhaps Aries, there are things that you do have to take seriously, and you have to spend time thinking about them, and you have to consider, the emotional environment in which you're functioning. People are emotional, situations are emotional. You can't just do what's on your mind, do the first thing that comes to mind and just hope for the best. You do have to take into account other people's sensitivities. But it's important perhaps not to project. It's perhaps not other people's sensitivities that you need to primarily consider. It's perhaps your own sensitivities. And you, like everyone else, do have these sensitivities. You're not entirely thick-skinned. And perhaps it's a time when you need to have an element of self-respect and gravitas. And also with this new moon in Scorpio, it may be a time when you need to start considering things which are difficult and complicated, perhaps of a financial nature. Scorpio, from your perspective, can be about money, but it can be complicated money, other people's money, joint financial arrangements. And so, Aries, if there's something financial that you've just been ignoring, perhaps you take the view that it's too complicated, or someone else can sort it out, or you'll just hope for the best, maybe now is the time to consider it. And I mean, in some cases, I suppose it depends on the situation, and I'm not trying to be morbid. It might, if you have a will, for example, you might want to have another look at your will, because Scorpio, from an Aries perspective, is a sign which is about legacies and wills, or maybe you need to have another look at someone else's will. That can always be a contentious point, can't it? So if you're making an assumption that someone has made a particular will, then you shouldn't necessarily assume that that assumption is right. There may be things in that will that you you're not very happy about, but maybe can be changed. I suppose I'm talking about something quite extreme here and probably very unlikely, but it's documentation in general. Documentations, agreements, contracts. Do have a close look at them. Have another look at them. Don't assume that it's all sorted out. And you could assume that. If you're an Aries, you like things to be quick and spontaneous, and you don't want to spend time reading the small print. But maybe it is a time when you should be reading the small print. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, the new moon in Scorpio could make you come over as being quite an intense and attractive person, especially as from a heliocentric viewpoint, we've got Venus making a trine to Mars. That Venus trine Mars is not exact at the moment, but it's getting there. And so with Venus moving to a trine of Mars, your ruler, heliocentrically, not geocentrically, there's a chance that your attractiveness could be boosted over the next couple of days. So, overall, Aries, things are a little more complicated than usual, but I actually think that you're in quite a strong position, and do tune into the power of your feelings, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to look at the small print. Taurus, we've got a new moon today, and this new moon is in Scorpio. So with a new moon in Scorpio, we do have to think about other people and relationships, and it just could be that this new moon represents a time when you need to have another look at the various relationships you're in. Perhaps you've taken them for granted, or you've just assumed they're going to be moving in a particular way when actually things might be different. And so it could be a change. So you perhaps related to someone in a particular way, and suddenly there's a break, a fork in the road even. A decision has to be made. And it may be that you start to see someone, for the first time, you start to understand who they are. Or, new moons are about new beginnings. And so you're involved with someone at one level, and then the pace changes. That could be that the pace gets faster. You start getting closer to someone with this new moon. It may be that you start to move away. You start to separate. And new moon can represent someone who you've never seen before. Someone over the next couple of weeks may move into your life, or may make themselves visible, and you see them for the first time. You understand them for the first time. And that might be the beginning of a new relationship. And even if you don't look at it in terms of relationships with this new moon in Scorpio, the action in many respects is in terms of the other. It's about what other people are planning on initiating. It's not perhaps what you are initiating. And so look at people's plans. So if people say they're going to do something, don't just be dismissive. Don't just look the other way. It may concern you with this new moon. So don't just let other people get on with it and sort of not think about how it might impact you, because at some level it could have an impact. Now, this new moon is trine Saturn. Moon is making a trine to Saturn, and I think that moon making a trine to Saturn is potentially quite useful, and it perhaps allows relationships to develop in such a way that you have a certain amount of control, and also you may be helped by other people. Other people can actually, in some respects, be a be a stabilizing influence. Now, Venus is your ruler, and I mentioned the fact that Venus is conjunct the fixed star Sabik. And I suspect that Venus conjunct the fixed star Sabik is a fairly minor influence, if that. But if one sort of looks at it in a sort of a textbook way, Venus conjunct Sabik, you might be a little bit, spendthrift. Maybe you could spend too much money or spend money on things that aren't particularly useful. And sometimes you might want to question your own motives. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because there is a danger here with Venus conjunct Sabik that you might do something that is perhaps morally not particularly desirable, and you have to ask why. Who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the satisfaction of your ego? Do you have some sort of bad intention? Maybe. I mean, chances are this doesn't apply to you, but for the sake of completeness, I feel I do have to mention this, the fact that Venus is conjunct Sabik, and Venus is in Sagittarius. Aside from the fact that it's conjunct Sabik, and Sagittarius is, from a Taurian perspective, is quite a complicated sign, and it's quite sort of deep and introspective. I know Sagittarius is not a complicated sign. It's not introspective, but I'm talking about from a Taurian perspective. This is because from a Taurian perspective, Sagittarius covers the 8th house in the Taurian chart. So there's an 8th house feel there, and so you could be sort of going deep within yourself, and some of your motivations might be somewhat complicated, and they may not even always be desirable. So try not to overcomplicate things, and ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Are your motivations good, or are they just tied up with your own ego? So do consider that possibility. And I've talked about other people and how you relate to the to the rest of the world, but don't forget yourself. And in terms of yourself and who you are, I think it's very important that you don't underestimate yourself. And some of the negative feelings you have about yourself may be because, not just negative feelings about yourself, but negative feelings about other people, maybe because your focus is on you, other people, what people have, what you don't have. There may be a little sense of jealousy there, especially with this new moon in Scorpio. But do focus on what you are. And there seems to be the chance here that there can be a personal transformative process which allows you to get in touch with not just who you are, but just what you're good at. And if you can really sort of break through those barriers and really try to understand yourself, there seems to be a couple of talents that are just waiting to be recognized. And I think that once you're able to tune into these abilities, then any negativity that you might have will soon disappear. So perhaps that's something that you need to focus on. Yeah, I know there's a new moon, and the new moon is in Scorpio. It is in your opposite sign. It is a tendency to put a lot of attention on other people, but just don't forget yourself, and don't forget what you are actually capable of doing. Gemini, Mercury is trine Neptune. That arguably is the main aspect today. Okay, we've got a new moon, but Mercury trine Neptune I think is quite important, certainly for you, because Mercury is your ruler, and with Mercury trine Neptune, I think that you're going to probably be sort of more sensitive than usual. You're going to perhaps be more aware than usual, but aware not in a sort of mental way. It's not really about ideas and facts. It's more about the sort of the deeper emotional and spiritual side of things, and you just get it without really knowing how you get it. You perhaps have a feeling that something is the case, and it actually is the case. And it may be because you're noticing things. You're noticing things about the atmosphere. You can read the atmosphere. You can feel the atmosphere. It's not something that Geminis can always do, but I think today you can. And it is starting to make sense, and to make the most of the situation, it's important that you try to be as disciplined as possible. So if a lot of information is coming your way, especially on a level of emotion, perhaps even on a psychic level. If this kind of information is coming your way, everything has to be very clean, very properly organized. There can't be any mess, because you're not going to really understand things if there is a mess. And as I always say, it's a very good thing that this camera is just looking at me. If you looked at this overall room, my hypocrisy would be absolutely clear. I'm living in a tip, I suppose you could say, and perhaps that doesn't help my judgment. But Gemini, don't be like me. It's got to be well organized. Everything's got to be well organized. That's so important, because if things are not well organized, you're not going to be able to understand what's going on. Your ability to pick up things emotionally and spiritually and psychically is going to be interfered with. So a clear environment leads to clear perceptions. And in terms of organization and making sure that everything is in order, we of course have a new moon today, and this new moon is in Scorpio. And for you, Gemini, this new moon is about, I think, clearance tasks. That's one way of looking at it. If anything needs to be cleared out or removed, now's the time to start. I'm not saying you're going to finish. This is a new moon. A new moon is about the beginning. So you get going on something. And only to an extent, I'm talking to myself here. Maybe I'm projecting. You get going on it, and you start the process. And this new moon can also relate to health. And with this new moon in Scorpio, Gemini, it's perhaps a time to look at what you're eating, what you're consuming. I had a bit of a shock recently, a potential shock here, because in terms of my own diet, I really like eating raw oats. I don't like to cook them. I just like to have raw oats and with milk. I don't like to cook. That's that's the way I like to eat my oats. Now then, I found out that there is this substance called phytic acid. I think it's called phytic acid, and it's in oats. And for somehow it's an anti-food. It destroys the nutrition, and when you eat it, it can have a catastrophic impact on your iron levels. And so I've been eating these raw oats for ages, for years and years and years, and it suddenly occurs to me that I might have been destroying myself by eating these raw oats, that I should have been soaking them for 12 hours before eating them. And that was a real realization. I was quite upset by that, and that might explain things. So that might be the kind of thing with a new moon. Like for myself, I'm really sorry to project. I've made this. I mean, I know it. I know you're not really interested, but so I've made this resolution that now I'm going to soak my oats. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to soak them for 12 hours, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm not suggesting you do the same thing, because your situation is different, but it's the idea of having a feeling about your health and making a change. And this is certainly something I plan on for myself. I actually plan on start doing it tomorrow. That's in fact today. That's when I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to start soaking oats. So for me, I've got my sun in Gemini. Seems to be working quite well in terms of my plans. But what about you? Maybe you haven't been so careless as me in terms of nutrition, but there just may be something about nutrition or exercise or something which is asking for a new approach. And make it clear, I'm not giving medical advice here, as usual. You might know it sounds a bit boring, but it's just a lifestyle recommendation here. So perhaps consider how that new moon may impact your well-being and what you might want to do, or what you might want to change, or perhaps some new regime. I mean, if it's a drastic regime, of course, make sure you get medical advice. But some new regime which might improve your health and well-being. And so I think that's perhaps what the new moon could signify. Cancer. We have a new moon in Scorpio, and at the beginning of this video I was a little bit negative about new moon in Scorpio. I said, well, the moon is under pressure because it's conjunct the sun and it's in Scorpio, it's fallen in Scorpio, but you're a Cancer. It's a different situation, and I think that this new moon overall is going to be a good thing. Now, while that new moon is exact, you might feel yourself to be under a little bit of pressure. I mean, the moon is, it's going to be conjunct the sun, it's going to be in the sign, it's going to be fallen, so you might feel that things are a little bit too much, and you might also feel that you don't perhaps have as much power as usual. So that's possible. But I think this is very short term. I think when we're looking at a new moon, we perhaps need to look at it on a sort of broader level. And I think this new moon for you does mark some kind of new beginning, a new start. And you can think about perhaps what changes you want to make. And it's in Scorpio, and Scorpio is a Cancer-friendly sign. It's friendly to Cancerians because it's a water sign. And this new moon may start, for example, a new creative chapter. So if you want to do something new, which is a fundamental expression of who you are and what you're good at, then now I think is very much a time when you can start to do it. And also Scorpio it's quite an intense and powerful sign. It's also quite an attractive sign in a way, and depending on your situation, there may be a romantic element to the new moon in Scorpio. It depends on your situation. I have to say this, by the way. It is expected of me. It would be remiss of me in terms of astrology, what people expect from a 12-sign astrology reading, not to suggest that the fifth house is related to Scorpio in a Cancerian chart, and the fifth house in sort of, what shall I put it, traditional popular astrology. The fifth house is often connected with with romance. So for me to ignore that, I think would be remiss. So there are perhaps romantic possibilities with this new moon in Scorpio, or at least the beginning of something. And regardless of what's happening, things have to be done on your terms. This new moon for you is very creative, and it's your creativity. It's not about someone else being creative. It's about you being creative, and that is not something to compromise. And this new moon is trine Saturn. So we got Sun moving towards a trine to Saturn. We've got Moon making the trine to Saturn, and Moon trine Saturn can be very useful in terms of other people and who you're getting on with people. That is something you can do, and Moon trine Saturn may allow you to get on with someone in a way that is very respectful, where there is complete respect for each other. You respect each other's perspective, and you respect each other's sort of creative potential, and there is a sense in which you and someone else can learn from each other. So in terms of relationships, whatever those relationships are about, that's perhaps a way to work out whether a relationship is worth bothering with, at least for today. Is there mutual respect? Is there a sense in which you understand each other's priorities? Is there a sense in which you're not interfering in or contradicting each other's fundamental creativity? That's what it should be all about with this moon trine Saturn. But with this moon trine Saturn, it may be that in certain situations it might be a good idea to accept some advice, even a little bit of good-natured criticism, provided it's good-natured. It's not about anyone being judgmental or telling you shouldn't do something. Just a little bit of constructive criticism, a few suggestions from someone you respect could actually be today very useful. Leo, we have a new moon today, and this new moon in Scorpio, and this new moon could be about your home, and it could be about the things that are fundamental to you, the things that are really important to you. And so you might start to think about where you're living and how you're living, and you might be thinking that actually things could be a little bit better, but maybe it's the start of a new process. You look at where you live with fresh eyes, and you perhaps make the decision that you want to move in a particular direction with it. I mean, you may start to think about, I don't know, redecoration perhaps, or the way furniture is placed. I mean, in certain situations, a new moon can be about moving. I mean, not immediately. I mean, although if you are about to move, or if you have just moved, I think this new moon could be particularly important because it represents a new cycle, a new way in which you can find real comfort. But it's not necessarily just about the four walls, the physical walls around you. It can be about finding a place for yourself and starting to realize that you know where you're most comfortable. And if you know where you're most comfortable, you go to that place and you start to put down roots, and perhaps that's what this new moon is all about. And I think that this new moon is sort of extra helpful in that direction because it's trine Saturn. So the new moon trine Saturn for you, Leo, it's actually quite a sort of private process, but it's about you creating some kind of discipline and structure for yourself, and it's all based around finding that spot that spot where you feel completely comfortable. I suppose with the spot there was this. I don't know if you read Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan. I think I haven't read it for a long time, and he. Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan was talking about finding one's spot. One has to find the place where one is meant to be, where one feels totally comfortable on a sort of a spiritual level. And once you've found this spot, you are invulnerable. So where is that place where you are completely invulnerable? And of course, I think that sort of Castaneda was talking about sort of spiritual invulnerability, sort of whatever the pressures, the tensions, the demons you have to deal with. If you found that spot, then you are completely safe. You are completely secure. There is absolutely nothing to worry about. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, in one sense, I don't think that you're especially in the mood for relating, at least not in a sort of a general sense. I think that in many respects you are quite introspective today. But for those relationships you have that are important to you, I think that there is a way in which you can kind of bring them under control, and your seriousness, I think, may be appreciated in some quarters, and at the same time you may appreciate someone else's seriousness, and overall you're probably going to expect people. You're going to have an expectation that other people are serious, that they honour their words, and I think that you're possibly going to be less tolerant than usual in terms of other people being late, letting you down. I think you are actually going to have high expectations. So given the fact you have high expectations, that just may limit your social contacts today. You're going to want to have people around who are going to match or exceed your expectations. Virgo. So Virgo, yesterday I think I might have mentioned the fact that Mercury is trine Neptune. Mercury is still trine Neptune, and I think that this trine between Mercury and Neptune is pretty useful. It allows you to communicate in quite a free-flowing way. I think that you can you understand people without really having to ask questions. Mercury making that trine to Neptune. Neptune is a sort of slightly otherworldly influence. It's in Pisces, your opposite sign, trine Neptune, which is of course your ruler. So you get things, and you can be, I think, a lot more sensitive than usual, and so you can use many different channels of communication. And as I've said before in this video, this Mercury trine Neptune, it can be connected with I don't know, psychic abilities, for example, being more telepathic than usual, and being able to just understand things, understand the way people are thinking and feeling, and this is just going to allow you to sort of fine-tune your approach. You're going to be able to come over in a way that is sensitive and sympathetic, and I think that in most cases, you will be able to say the right thing. Though, when you do get information, however this information comes your way, it's important not to overreact to it, because I think it's a day for being relatively passive. It's not really a day, I think, for initiating big things, because I don't think your understanding is going to be quite good enough, and I think there is some danger that you look at things in the wrong way. And the reason for this is there's a Grand Trine in water today, which I possibly should have picked up on. I'm actually I think I might have to do a brief segment after these 12 signs and sort of mention this Grand Trine. And so the Grand Trine in water, it goes like this, is that we have got Mercury is at 28 Scorpio. Mars is at 29 Cancer. Neptune is at 27 Pisces. So, with this Grand Trine in water, things are flowing emotionally. There's a lot that we can pick up. There's a lot going on, but you might be overwhelmed by it. And in fact, what we have Mercury is on the Mars-Neptune midpoint. And so with Mercury on the Mars-Neptune midpoint, there is some danger that you get attracted to the wrong things. You find things attractive which are not useful. They could be harmful. And remember, I always describe the Mars-Neptune pair as being about sleaze, and there is something a little bit sleazy about Mars-Neptune pairing. So with Mercury on the Mars-Neptune midpoint, it's possible that some Virgos are attracted to things which could be sleazy, could have sort of a sense of being a bit risky, having a sense of being forbidden or criminal, even. I mean, I'm sure that's unlikely, but just think about what you're being attracted to and what you're getting involved with. I'm sure in most cases this is not going to be the case, but I suppose I have to tell you what I see. And on the plus side, I suppose just keep it theoretical. I mean, maybe theoretically you might be attracted to things that are a bit sleazy and underhand. Okay, well, then you can, I don't know, watch a video about it or read about it on the internet. You don't actually have to get involved. Libra. Well, I suppose I have to say that Venus is your ruler, and Venus is conjunct this fixed star Sabik. I'm not convinced that this fixed star Sabik necessarily means anything. I mean, okay, it does mean something, but I'm not convinced that it's going to have any impact today. But I suppose I might as well mention it in case you're interested, and perhaps as a small warning with Venus conjunct Sabik on this fixed star, I suppose there could be some danger that you're a little bit careless and wasteful. I mean, that's what Vivian Robson was suggesting. There is a certain wastefulness to Venus conjunct Sabik. You're not really thinking things through, perhaps being just a little bit lazy, and you just do something without necessarily thinking it through. And I mean, also consider your motivations. There is something potentially a little bit unpleasant about Sabik, and so perhaps with Venus conjunct Sabik, your motivations may not always be 100% perfect. There may be a sense in which you have a grudge. There's a little bit of jealousy creeping in, but I don't want to talk too much about it. It's probably and hopefully a pretty marginal influence, this fixed star Sabik. Now, aside from that, we do have a new moon, and this new moon is in Scorpio, and Scorpio, Libra, from your perspective, can be about money as a sign. And so new moon in Scorpio for you may be about a financial beginning. You perhaps decide that you want to do something of a financial nature, or you look at money and you think, well, let's do this, and it might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing. You have to work it out. And if you have got any plans of a financial nature, do be careful about who you talk to about these plans. There are people who can certainly be very useful, and so with this, with this new moon, you may be able to sort of have sort of low profile discussions about money and work out whether or not your plans are actually viable, whether or not they're going in the right direction. I mean, maybe they are going in the right direction, but you need to be careful about it. And it's not a time for making financial decisions. You've got ideas. We've got perhaps the beginning of something, but it's not really time to really see it through. And this new moon is trine Saturn, and I think that trine Saturn, in a sort of a material sense, is possibly quite useful. It gives you a certain amount of discipline and an awareness that you can't take things too quickly. You mustn't take things too quickly. That a little bit of organisation and care in terms of your money is going to be important. But this new moon in Scorpio, it's not just about money. It's also about your resources, and it's a question of what you have. And it's not just material resources. It's just all your resources. Your intellect, your experience, your wisdom, these are all your resources. And it may be a time with this new moon when you can start to bring your resources together. And this could actually be quite transforming. And you may actually start to realize that you've actually got resources that you didn't know you had. And it may be that you've got certain abilities, certain skills that you have not put into practice, that you thought were unimportant, you thought that no one cared about. But this new moon may allow you to bring these resources into play. And so, Libra, it's going to be very important today that you don't underestimate yourself. That really, really does matter. Scorpio, we've got a new moon today, and this new moon is in your sign. I suppose every year there is a new moon in Scorpio. I think the occasional year you'll get two new moons in Scorpio, I suppose. If you have sort of you could have, I suppose, a new moon right at the beginning of the Scorpio and then right at the end. I suppose that's possible, but this year there's only one new moon in Scorpio, so if you miss this new moon, you've got to wait another year. So this new moon in Scorpio, I think, is pretty useful. I mean, it's always good to have some kind of new beginning, being able to just start again. You can look at things from a different view. And for many Scorpios, it might be a time where you feel that in some ways you can relaunch yourself. Perhaps recently, things had got a little bit stale. Your approach had taken you so far, but not all the way, and so you wanted to look at things again. And now, new moon, it's a new beginning, and you might have ideas now about what you want to do in the immediate future. Now, the new moon itself is quite secretive. It happens in the darkness. Of course, by definition, when you've got a new moon, you can't see anything. Of course, it's impossible to find a dark sky now, isn't it? So much light pollution. But ideally, with this new moon, if you're far from civilization, the night of a new moon, no clouds, you will not see. You won't see anything. That's the nature of a new moon, and so the new moon is a time of secrecy, where things should develop in the darkness, and your ideas should be developing in the darkness, at least to begin with. And this new moon is trine Saturn, and I think with this new moon trine Saturn, Scorpio, that does give you a fair amount of discipline, the ability to really focus and streamline. So you have an idea, you can streamline it and structure it in such a way that it can really work for you, and you don't really have to think about anyone else, not really, because it's a time with this new moon for being focused on yourself and what you can do. Now, in terms of any new plans you have, I do think that secrecy is important. But that doesn't mean that you should just be quiet. You do seem to have something to say at the moment, and you may feel that it's very important that you say it right now. I mean, Mercury is making a trine to Mars, and it's also making a trine to Neptune. We have this Grand Trine in water signs, and so with this Grand Trine in water signs, things are moving, and you're able to express yourself with incredible power and incredible sensitivity. But you're not expressing yourself in terms of divulging your secrets. You're keeping your own feelings and your own. Well, you're keeping the things that matter secret. But there are other things that I think you need to talk about, that you need to mention. And I think that now might be the time, because this Grand Trine in water signs, Mercury trine Mars, Mercury trine Saturn. I should have mentioned it in the introduction, but I didn't. But it does allow things to move very quickly, and moving on an emotional level. Your emotions, Scorpio, today are really very finely tuned, and I don't think there's anything that you miss. So if you're in a situation where there are people around you, you know what they're thinking, you know what they're feeling, you know what they're going to do next. At least you have the capacity to know all that. If you just want to pay attention, consider what's happening, and that is very much the way to do it. So your natural skills, your natural sensitivity today will, I think, really serve you well. And I suppose the key point is getting the balance right between the public and the private. Private, certainly, there are things you have to work out on your own. You can't have anyone interrupting your flow. It's got to be you've got to work it out. That's the private side. But then you've got the public side. You've got something to say. You've got something to communicate. It almost feels a little bit urgent, and so decide what needs to be communicated and do it. With the conviction and power that is such an important feature of your sign. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, there's a new moon, and with this new moon, you may take the view that it's quite a serious event, and it's an event that can't be trivialized, and I don't think it's particularly extroverted from your perspective. It might sort of remind you of your own space and your own priorities, and that some things maybe just shouldn't be revealed. I mean, we think about that new moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is quite a private sign, and you've got a new moon there. So you want to do things your way. And this new moon is trine Saturn. And so new moon trine Saturn, it's all happening at your pace. And I would said in many cases, the less the less connection you have with other people, the better, because there are things going on that really you don't need anyone else's help. You can do it yourself, and you can work things out on your own at your own pace. And while you're doing this, Sagittarius, I think that you're going to have a great sense of your own power and what you're able to do, and you can achieve a lot, and you can be quite transformative in your own way, but everything has to be right. And at the moment things aren't 100% perfect, and you're not going to make them perfect by, I don't know, throwing yourself into some sort of wild social life. That's not going to help at all. And so it might be a time, Sagittarius, when perhaps you should stick to your own company, because I'm just not convinced that other people are going to be particularly helpful, or at least most other people. I suppose in terms of close relationships, we do have a Grand Trine. Mercury is trine Saturn. Sorry, Mercury is trine Neptune. Mercury is trine Mars, and that Mercury, which Mercury is actually about to go into Sagittarius very soon, in a day or two's time. Mercury will be in Sagittarius. It will be in your sign, and Mercury may represent someone who is moving into your life. They haven't fully moved into your life, but you're starting to perhaps to have more contact with them, and it may indicate that a relationship is about to change. Maybe a relationship is about to change for the better. Mercury might also represent someone new who is about to come into your life. So do consider that possibility. And with Mercury trine Mars, Mercury trine Neptune, I think this person is, in their own way, quite dynamic. It's an understated dynamism, but it is very much there. And they're also quite sensitive because Mercury is trine Neptune. So do watch what's happening in a social sense. While I don't think it's a time for socializing, that doesn't mean that you should be totally ignorant of what's happening in terms of the people around you, and you should open your eyes. Who's trying to get in touch with you? Who's getting closer to you? Who's moving away from you? These are perhaps issues that at the moment it might be worth your while to consider. Capricorn, you may be able to benefit from other people. I mean, in a sort of fairly sort of low profile kind of way, because we've got a new moon in Scorpio, and with that new moon in Scorpio, it represents perhaps a new beginning in terms of your social life and the people you allow into your life. And new beginnings can work in several ways. I mean, a new beginning can be about the decision that certain people are not useful anymore. I mean, I suppose that's a new beginning. A new beginning can also be about being in touch with new people you don't know very well, people you're just, you may be just getting to know, and this new moon can really herald this new beginning, especially as this new moon is trine Saturn, and Saturn is your ruler. So we've got Sun. Sun is at 9 Scorpio, and so it's fairly close to Saturn, which is at sort of 12, 13 Pisces. So, and the Moon is of course making a trine to Saturn. So there are people that you can, I think, benefit from, and we are not talking, I must emphasize, about just socializing for the sake of it. These planets, Saturn's in Pisces, Sun and Moon in Scorpio, they're quite serious. And so perhaps, Capricorn, you have to think about how you can benefit from other people's company. What use can certain people be? I think that certain people can be very useful, if you give them a chance. But you do have to be patient. This is a new moon. A new moon represents the beginning of a new cycle, and it may be a few days or even a couple of weeks before you start to have a really clear understanding of what is happening socially. And this new moon may also have an impact on your view of the future. The future always matters, doesn't it? Where are you going? What are your hopes for the future? And sometimes when we think about hopes for the future, we can be very focused on what we're told to hope for, what we're expected to hope for, what society expects us to hope for. Something like money, stability, security. But it goes beyond that right now. It goes towards your own personal hopes for the future. The hopes of the future which are just connected with your individuality. And you may start to see with this new moon the future in a different way. And you perhaps might realize that some of your hopes that you had, maybe just a few days ago, are not really what you wanted. You actually want something else, and so do consider that. And what would you like to happen? If you were allowed to, make a wish, what would you wish for? Let's think about a reasonable wish, not some fantasy, absurd wish. But if you were to make a reasonable wish, what would you wish for? And maybe you'll find, if you think about it carefully, but what you wished for last week is not going to be what you wish for next week. And so, wishes can be important because they're informing you about where you want to go. They represent a target for yourself. And so, Capricorn, maybe with this new moon, you want to perhaps adjust your goals, adjust your targets, and to start to focus on something else. And you'll do this as you start to sort of reimagine your future. Aquarius, we have a new moon today, and I think that this new moon could actually be quite focused on your ambitions and what you would like to happen, where you'd like to go to. And so with this new moon, you start to think, I'd like this to happen. I want to work towards this. And this is especially relevant if you are working, if you have a business, or you are thinking about your goals, and you're doing it in a sort of, you're working towards something in quite a public way. If that is the case, and this new moon is potentially going to be quite motivating. It's going to perhaps be about deciding for yourself what your ambitions really are. And the new moon, in some ways, is quite secretive. It is quite private. So you have your own ambitions. There are things you really want, you desire, you feel that this is where you're supposed to be going, and you don't have to discuss these ambitions. They can be quite private, at least to begin with, but still, with this new moon, I think that many Aquarians are going to want to dedicate themselves to something, and perhaps you're going to want to create some targets, like you want to achieve this by this particular date. That might be the approach with this new moon, but it is something private. I must emphasize this, because if you talk about what you want today with this new moon, or even tomorrow, as while the moon is in Scorpio, then you're damaging something. You're damaging the very thing you're trying to preserve, because as soon as you start to talk about your ambitions, particularly when those ambitions are not well formed, you'll get feedback, you'll get criticism. You will find that you start to doubt your ambitions, and you might feel, oh well, it was a nice idea, but it seems that other people are not enthusiastic, it's not going to work. So at first, work privately on what you want, and then at a later stage you'll be able, when you've really sorted things out, when you maybe work through the problem areas, when you've ironed out a few details and you've got some answers, then you'll be in a position to be more open about what you want. Now, I don't know what your situation is, but with this new moon, it might be a good time to consider new job, or a job, or perhaps a new set of responsibilities. So if you're working and you're not entirely comfortable with what you're doing, you're not happy, you feel you're not being challenged, you might want to change. I'm not saying you should leave your job, but maybe you should be looking for new responsibilities, or doing something you hadn't done before, and stretching yourself. And I think that would be a good way of using the energies of the new moon. But again, you don't have to be open, or you shouldn't be open about what you want to begin with, because if you reveal too much too early, you could, in some respects, you could start to weaken yourself. North Node, sorry, not the North Node, New Moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is actually quite an emotional sign. It's quite a deep sign, relating perhaps to the past. And being in Scorpio, it can relate to the distant past. I mean, I know that Scorpio is a high-profile sign from an Aquarius perspective, but it's a sign that many Western astrologers associate with the mother. So it may say something about your mother, regardless of whether your mother is still alive. It's about your mother's influence and the extent to which you are sort of integrating your mother into your sort of way of being. I suppose there is a sort of a gender issue there, but there may be issues, in terms of memories about your mother, regardless of your gender. So the mother may take up more of your thoughts than usual, and just think about your mother's influence with this new moon. It might be useful, and it might actually be revealing. Again, it doesn't matter whether your mother is still alive. She's still around, certainly in terms of your memories and in terms of how she influences who you are. Of course, mother. It's going to be the presidential election coming up, and I remember I was doing a course in social psychology, and I was supposed to read this book about voting and why people vote the way they do. I mean, this book was, I read this in the sort of mid to early 90s. I don't even know if I read the whole book. I just flicked through it. I mean, but I do remember the key point about this book. And the key point, was it was looking at what is the main influence on the way people vote. We've got presidential election coming up. And according to I think it might have been a study coming out of the University of Chicago, perhaps, and they found that the main influence, it wasn't a huge influence, but the most important influence on the way you vote is the way your mother votes. So if you are an American voter, and if you are casting your vote with a new moon in Scorpio, think about why you're voting, think about why you're voting the way you're voting. And think about it in a psychological sense. Don't just look at the immediate issues. Think about something deeper than that. And perhaps think about your mother. There may be something interesting there about your relationship with her. Pisces. Pisces, we have, in a way, quite a lot of action today. We have a Grand Trine in water signs. We have, Mercury is in Scorpio, Mars is in Cancer, Neptune is in Pisces, and they're all running together. And of course, when you've got Grand Trine in water signs, that often has a big impact on Pisceans. Emotions are flowing. You're picking up on things. Mercury is trine Neptune, and so with Mercury trine Neptune, you're probably going to be sort of more sensitive than usual. And actually other people are going to be more sensitive than usual as well. So, you're not the only one who's sensitive. Some of the people close to you are just as sensitive as you are. They're just as emotionally aware as you are. And so, don't underestimate other people's sensitivity. And of course, today we have a new moon. And new moon is in Scorpio. And this new moon is making a trine to Saturn, and Saturn is in Pisces. So, this new moon could actually be quite inspirational. And, the way it might work is you've got the new moon in Scorpio. It's getting inspirations from, I don't know, beyond everyday reality. From the cosmos, from the universe. These inspirations are available. You're starting to pick up on them. They perhaps are of a spiritual nature. They're about your destiny. They're perhaps about the world's destiny. You pick up on it all. And then Saturn makes a trine to the new moon. So Saturn can actually make sense of it. And so, give yourself the time to be inspired. I don't think today, Pisces, is a time for to be filling your life, filling every hour of the day up with trivia and just mundane nonsense. Other people can get in your way. Other people can clutter things up for you. You don't want that. You need to give yourself the space to be able to take advantage of a new moon and to bring the energy of this new moon down to earth so that you can understand yourself and that you can also understand what's going on around you, where society is going. You can really pick up on things. So, it's just very important that you're able to absolutely make the most of it. And also, Pisces, don't forget your own power. At the moment, you are in a position of some power. You can actually create a level of transformation. You have this, indeed, you have this transformative energy. So you're able to pick up what's going on around you, and you're able to distill it, and then you're able to understand what needs to be done, what you want to do. And so, don't allow yourself to be pushed around. Don't allow yourself to be following someone else's schedule, following someone else's rules. Okay, some rules have to be followed, I understand that, but you have to really get it that you are very strongly placed, and you have this unmistakable transformative energy. And I think that perhaps the reason for this is that you're able to, take the emotional and perhaps spiritual vibes going around you, and you're able to bring them together, and you're able to distill them, and you're able to turn them into something, and that's going to be the basis of your power. So this new moon, it sort of adds to the thing. That new moon is a strength, and it's all about understanding things and getting things and harnessing things, and then being able to really pack your punch. And so, Pisces, you're not someone who should be ignored, though with this new moon in Scorpio, you may feel that to begin with, you may need to work things out on your own. In fact, for a lot of the 12 signs, it's a time for working things out on your own. I think that really does matter. And that's it. That's all I've got to say for the 12 signs. I now want to look at things from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 25, which is innocence. And the whole point about innocence is not having expectations. If we have expectations, we ensure that nothing happens. Expectations just kill the magic. And so innocence is the way we should start. And we should, if possible, sort of not try to focus on what we want, what we'd like to want. We shouldn't be focusing on our ambitions. We shouldn't be focusing on any targets we might have. We should just let things happen. Que sera, sera. That perhaps should be one's approach. And we have 3 moving lines here, and the bottom moving line, the bottom line moves, and so the bottom line is saying that we can make progress. We can start taking those first steps in a particular direction, and we make good progress. And the reason we make good progress is we just don't have any expectations. It's just attracting good luck by having no expectations. So that does start off very well. But the third line moves. And the third line is perhaps warning that too much innocence may be a bad thing. Maybe. I mean, there are a couple of alternative interpretations of this. So the image we have with this third line moving is that you have you have a cow or some cattle, it's your property, and you tie it up. I suppose this one does. Not that I know about cows, and it's fine. You're in a village. You know everyone. What can happen to your cow? But actually, what happens is there's a stranger passing through the village who sees your cow, and they says, "Oh, that's nice," and just takes your cow and just goes away with it, and you've lost your cow. And so, don't be innocent to the point of being naive. I think there is a warning perhaps here of theft, perhaps something being taken, and so make sure all the doors are locked. Don't walk down the street holding a $1,000 mobile phone to your cell phone to your face. So something could be taken from you. I mean, it may not be an act of theft in a sort of a criminal sense. It may be someone takes advantage of you, or somehow you've made yourself vulnerable, and you've been too innocent, and you've known that you know you've made you don't know how vulnerable you made yourself. You think it's okay, but actually it's not okay, and someone sees a mistake and just takes advantage of it. So that's one way of looking at this line, but there's an alternative way of looking at this line, which is also not particularly fortunate, and it's saying, well, don't prepare for the future, because if you do, it'll all be for nothing. And that, to my mind, doesn't make much sense. And I think, what it's saying is that, you try to be sensible, you try to do the right thing, you think, well, it's an uncertain future, we need to make preparations, and that's what everyone tells us to do, isn't it? You've got to prepare for the future, you've got to put money aside, you've got to have pensions and all this kind of stuff. That's what we're told at every step of the way, but we've got to prepare for the future. And what the I Ching is saying is, no, you shouldn't prepare for the future, because if you prepare for the future, you'll lose it all. Now, remember, this I Ching reading is for one day, so it's not telling you not to have a pension plan or anything like that, not to put money aside or anything. It's not saying that. It just may be that there may be a time today when you try to be too clever. You think something is going to happen, and you overthink it, and you think you're making sensible preparations, and in fact, your sensible preparations are the very thing that just wreck it all. So do consider that. And then we get the fourth line moving. And the fourth line is kind of a mitigation line, I would have said, to the previous line. And what the fourth line is saying is that if something really, really does belong to you, you can't lose it. Now, though the previous line was about losing a cow, something being taken, your property being taken. But then the fourth line is saying that, well, if something does belong to you, truly belongs to you, I mean, not just perhaps in a legal sense, but in a sort of a spiritual and existential sense, if it belongs to you, you cannot lose it. And so I think that suggests that any sort of vulnerability to theft may be limited, because in the end, you get to keep what really does belong to you. And also, there's another suggestion here that if there's something you're looking for, particularly sort of in an employment sense, you're looking for a job or you're looking for someone to do you a favor, then because you shouldn't be looking for it. So if you really want something, don't look for it, particularly in an employment setting, because when you don't seek it, when you don't look for it, you get it. And that might be you don't want a job, so you get the job. Something you don't want, but also is useful, something you need, what you would like, but that can happen. So this emphasizes the point that this is all about innocence and not having expectations. But of course, don't be so innocent that you leave your cow next to your house and someone just takes it. I mean, do look after your property. I think that does matter. And this hexagram has got 3 moving lines, and it moves to hexagram number 53, which is development. And so development is, after all that drama with 25, things happen, things don't happen, but whatever happens, in the end, we move to 53, which is about gradual development. Slowly we move towards our goal. It's not a time to be in a hurry. again, previous hexagram was about having no expectations. Take it slowly. Yeah, don't have expectations. Do what you can. Move forward in a solid way. And, in the end, I think that you'll get the results you're looking for. But really, you shouldn't be looking for anything, because it's so important at the moment not to have expectations. So I was going to go straight to the new moon, but I didn't really mention the Grand Trine in the Grand Trine in water signs. So I just very quickly wanted to look at that Grand Trine in water signs, which I hadn't mentioned, which I should have mentioned, and so I will. In fact, what I'll do is I'll start by looking. I'll put up the chart of the new moon, but to begin with, I'm not really going to look so much at the new moon. I just want to focus on that. I want to focus on that Grand Trine. So here's a new moon chart. New moon is at 12:47 p.m. London time. But anyway, let's not just look at the new moon to begin with. Let's just look at Mercury, Mars, and Neptune. So there have been a lot of Grand Trines recently, and this Grand Trine in water signs, is quite powerful, and we can see how midpoints are working. So Mercury is on the sort of Mars-Neptune midpoint. So with Mercury on the Mars-Neptune midpoint, that might be what we're attracted to intellectually. I suppose if you associate Mars and Neptune as a pair with sleaze and things that perhaps we shouldn't be involved with, things that are kind of risky and criminal and that kind of thing, with Mercury on the Mars-Neptune midpoint, that might be what we're attracted to. There are ways of working that through without compromising ourselves. We don't necessarily have to go to dangerous places. We can, read a crime novel, watch a video about true crime or something like that. So that's I suppose is a negative way of looking at Mars-Neptune. I suppose Mars-Neptune, in a more positive sense, can be about the search for something which goes beyond ourselves. Mars-Neptune putting energy into, for example, spiritual development. And so Mercury on the Mars-Neptune midpoint, from a sort of mental level, it's perhaps considering our spirituality and reading about it and thinking about it and meditating. That would be an effective way to use this Grand Trine in water signs. But from a sort of a psychic sense, I've already mentioned the fact that Mercury trine Neptune is quite psychic. It's quite spiritual, and you throw Mars in there as well, and that's perhaps where we want to put our energy. So I think I should have mentioned this Grand Trine and water signs at the beginning of the video, but anyway, I'm mentioning it now. And so what I want to talk about is this new moon, and a lot of excitement about the new moon. It's not an eclipse. You can tell it's not an eclipse because when you have an eclipse, the nodal axis is tied up with the new moon, and you can see the nodal axis is quite a long way from the new moon. And so the question is, how powerful is it? I mean, it kind of sounds powerful, doesn't it? Because it's in Scorpio, but there's always a Scorpio new moon. I'm not entirely convinced in itself that this new moon is powerful. I mean, I suppose you could say what makes the new moon potentially powerful is the fact that it happens at the same time as a Grand Trine in water signs. So you could say that at the precise moment of a new moon, when the moon is at 9:35 Scorpio, you have to look at what the other planets are doing. You have to look at them as a whole and say, well, new moon is taking place at the same time as Grand Trine in Mercury, between Mercury, Mars, and Neptune. So you could then say, what might that Mercury, Mars, Neptune be about? So you could say, as I've just been saying, that new moon could be about a beginning of, on a personal level, the beginning of some spiritual quest, putting our energy into our spirituality, putting our energy into something, perhaps developing our psychic powers, for example. That might be one way of looking at it. Although, if you want to be negative about it, the new moon may be the beginning of a very deceptive phase of our lives, because Mercury is on the Mars-Neptune midpoint. But that might not just be about us; it may be about everyone else. People getting the wrong ideas. We're in that kind of world. People take ideas and they misunderstand these ideas. It can be about ideology, not, spirituality is one way of looking at it, but it's also be about ideas and what we believe, and perhaps getting the wrong end of the stick. And I suppose that could say something about what's happening in terms of the election and how people respond to the election result. People might overreact to the election result, whichever way it is. I mean, I have my own forecast about the election, but I'm not going to. I don't want to go into that at the moment. So that might be the way. That might be the way it works. But on a positive note, this new moon is trine Saturn, and so that trine Saturn potentially creates a certain amount of stability. Whatever this new beginning is, certainly for America, by definition, this new moon has, even though I don't think this new moon directly impacts the United States' chart, of course it will be a new moon for America. Whatever the election result is, it is a new beginning. And I suppose trine Saturn, that might provide a level of hope that however people respond to this new beginning, however bad it is, however good it is, whatever depends on what party you support, Saturn creates perhaps a degree of structure around it. So perhaps it's not quite as dramatic as it could be. Though, I don't think there's any reason why this new moon has to be dramatic. I suppose, yes, it happens at the same time as a Grand Trine in water. It also happens at the same time as a Mars-Pluto opposition. But this Mars-Pluto opposition, it's fairly close, but it's not absolutely exact. So I think that there are perhaps limits to how this how that Mars-Pluto. The thing is, how are we going to be able to distinguish between the Mars-Pluto energy? Mars-Pluto is exact. It makes an exact opposition on Sunday, and the new moon. The new moon may actually come over as being more dramatic than it fundamentally is, because it takes place at the same time as a Mars-Pluto opposition, because it takes place at the same time as the American election. So people might look back at this new moon and say, wow, that was a really important new moon. But every election is important in its own way. But it just may be the fact that the American election takes place just after a new moon. It may really feel like this is a new beginning, even though the new administration, doesn't take over until the end of January. Now, I did want to consider a few people who I think might be impacted by this new moon. And, one person is J.D. Vance. So here's J.D. Vance's chart. And that's his solar arc directions. I don't want to look at his solar arc directions. I just want to look at his straight chart. So there's J.D. Vance, born on August the 2nd, 1984. And you can see that J.D. Vance has a Sun-Saturn square. He has an exact Sun-Saturn square. There is his Sun at 1022 Leo, and Saturn is at 1002 Scorpio. So this new moon is very close to his Saturn, and it is square his Sun. So that seems to trigger his Sun-Saturn square. And Sun-Saturn square, how do you see it? I mean, you could see it in a sort of a negative way. You could see it as being very frustrating. He's someone who has had to deal with a lot of hurdles in his life, I suppose, particularly in his early life. I suppose in his book, what was it, Hillbilly Elegy? What was it? I don't know whatever it was, that book he wrote. But perhaps describing the hurdles of his background. But yeah, it can be hard-working, and his sun is in Leo. It's a strong place. If you use whole sign houses, then he's got the sun in the first house in Leo. That's quite a strong sun, and it's square Saturn. Yeah, Saturn, you could say hard-working, but that new moon is on his Saturn, quite closely on his Saturn, and quite closely square his sun. So I suppose you can look at it how you like. You could say, well, this is the responsibility of being elected vice president, being elected vice president, or this is the disappointment of him losing. But he's standing for vice president. He's not standing for president. And I would be inclined to say that this new moon is not really saying anything about whether he's not going to win or lose. It may be something about what's going on in his life. It might indicate that, I suppose, in his rallies in the last few days, just before the election, he has to be a bit careful. Perhaps he has to be careful what he says. He might disappoint himself. So I suppose you could say, from a security perspective, with the new moon on his Saturn square his sun, there might be something up. But I think it could just be frustrating for him, just a time of frustration. It does seem that there are going to be times, over the next couple of weeks where he's not going to be always particularly happy. You could say, well, that's because he's going to lose. As I said, I wouldn't say that. But if you're an astrologer that believes that Harris is going to win, of course, that new moon on his Saturn would, I suppose, support your argument, wouldn't it? But I don't know how important it is. I don't think that you could forecast a win or a loss simply based on a vice presidential candidate having a new moon on their Saturn, even though that Saturn is exactly square their sun. And another candidate or a former candidate who's impacted by this is Vivek Ramaswamy. So Vivek Ramaswamy, he taking a very active role in the campaign. I saw a YouTube video of him helping garbage people collect rubbish, because garbage has become an issue for both sides. With the one comedian saying at the Trump rally that Puerto Rico is garbage, and then Biden saying that Trump supporters are garbage. So garbage has been an issue, and so he has got new moon on his midheaven. He's got South Node on his midheaven. Now, his midheaven is square his Mars. So you could say new moon on his midheaven represents new responsibilities, a new job, a new role. So if you like me believe that Trump is going to win, then you would say new moon Vivek Ramaswamy's midheaven. This is perhaps him starting to get involved in perhaps his transition team, starting to look about his responsibilities in the Trump administration. Though you could say, well, he's got Mars square the midheaven. Mars square the midheaven. Okay, he is someone who is very motivated. In fact, he's got Mars opposition Jupiter square the midheaven. Clearly, he is someone who is very motivated, who really, he's, whatever you think of him, he's very successful, and in terms of his life and sort of academically and in terms of business and money. So in a way, so far, that Mars Jupiter hitting his midheaven has worked for him, and maybe with that new moon on the midheaven, that's going to really bring it all together. Though you could say new moon, square Mars, anger, disappointment, Trump has lost. That could be how the new moon is working. Now, going back to with Vance's chart, there was an interesting connection between J.D. Vance and Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah Winfrey has, like J.D. Vance, in fact, J.D. Vance was born exactly one Saturn cycle after Oprah Winfrey, I think. That's right, because Oprah Winfrey was born in 1954. Oprah Winfrey has her Saturn at 9 degrees 3 Scorpio. And she also has a Sun square Saturn and Venus square Saturn. And this new moon is right on Oprah Winfrey's Saturn. So maybe that's going to be quite motivating for Oprah Winfrey. I don't know what's going on in Oprah Winfrey's life. I don't really know very much about her. But having the new moon on her Saturn and new moon square her Sun-Venus conjunction, that it may represent some new beginning for her, but might be a little bit difficult. A time where she really does have to focus on her responsibility. There might be a setback, but there might be something that she feels that she needs to work on that sort of motivates her. So I still think there could be a problem there. Something causing a difficulty to Oprah Winfrey. Again, I don't know anything about her. I don't know what she's involved with, so I'm not really too sure how that could work out. I would say new moon, perhaps she needs to be a little bit careful with her health, not overdo it. That is certainly one possible manifestation. Sun square Saturn. I suppose there may be a financial aspect. Obviously she's a very rich woman, but still, the Saturn is. So the new moon is square her Sun Venus conjunction, and her Sun Venus conjunction is in her second house. And then there are a few other people. Imran Khan, I think Imran Khan, he is the former Prime Minister of Pakistan. I think he's still in prison, isn't he? And so the new moon is on his Venus. So new moon on his Venus, this may be a time for Imran Khan to perhaps reach out. I mean, to his supporters. Maybe it represents a point of departure for Imran Khan. He's perhaps been waiting to do something, waiting to gather support, and perhaps the new moon on his Venus could spur him to make a change. But his Venus is in Scorpio, so new moon on his Venus, I suppose, could mean, because Venus is in Scorpio, it's in its detriment. Maybe he'll be let down, or if I suppose Venus is about a woman, maybe he gets support from a woman. That is possible. That is possible. But I don't have a time of birth for Imran Khan, so it's kind of difficult to know exactly how this new moon is exactly going to work. Now, someone's chart who I looked at very recently was King Abdullah II of Jordan, and King Abdullah II of Jordan has a Sun-Venus conjunction in Aquarius, like Oprah. Now, the reason I looked at his chart recently is because, remember, there was a Mars-Pluto opposition. So he's just had Mars opposition his Mars. I mean, it seemed to be okay. I haven't heard anything bad's happened to him in the news. But now he's got a new moon square his Sun-Venus conjunction just after he's had his Mars opposition Mars, and he's got Pluto close to his Mars. So maybe that may put continued pressure on him. And his Saturn is relatively close to his midheaven. The new moon is relatively close to his midheaven. It's not exactly there, but I think it may represent a time where we see sort of continued pressure for King Abdullah II of King Abdullah II. And finally, I want to look at Kamala Harris's chart. Hopefully this will be my final look at her chart before the election. So does the new moon impact her? That is the question. So the new moon is, on the surface of it, it doesn't seem to have much of an impact on her. I mean, it seems to be in her 6th house. But so what? Always a new moon is going to be in her 6th house. That doesn't seem to be especially problematic. But then we look at the new moon again, and we think about the new moon in terms of semi-squares, sesquiquadrates, and sesquiquadrates in particular. And we've got quite an accurate time for Kamala Harris. Now, I understand that not everyone believes this is when she was born. I did get a commenter suggesting that her birth time is wrong and that this isn't a chart I should be using. But as far as I'm concerned, this is her chart. So I suppose there's a possibility it's not her right time. But assuming she's born at 9:28 p.m., she's got her ascendant at 24:25 Gemini, and she's got her north node at 24:31 Gemini. So that means that this new moon at 9:35 Scorpio is exactly sesquiquadrate her ascendant and is exactly sesquiquadrate her north node. So this north node very much puts her ascendant into focus. Now, the sort of Germanic schools of the German schools of astrology, the Eberton and Witte, they would possibly regard that sesquiquadrate as fairly neutral, and that you have to look at the planets, as they are. You just have to look at the planets. But that new moon still might create a certain amount of tension there, because it's sesquiquadrate her ascendant, sesquiquadrate her north node, certain amount of unease there. And it might then be a good idea to look at it in terms of the 45-degree dial. So we have got a new moon at 9:35. So we're going to just we're going to see where the new moon falls. So the first third of this dial, which I'm running through, is the cardinal signs. Then we get to the fixed signs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this dial to 39:35 so that lines up to see what midpoints we've got here. Oh, that's 39:34, good enough. So that's 1 minute out. So this is when we put that's where the new moon is on her 90-degree dial. And there you can see it's making a semi-square and a sesquiquadrate to her north node and her ascendant. So the question then is, what midpoints does it pick up on? And remember, in the 90-degree dial, conjunctions, oppositions, and squares are shown as conjunctions. So Kamala Harris has a Sun-Moon opposition. So that Sun-Moon opposition is shown as a Sun-Moon conjunction. So there's a symmetry here between the new moon hits her Mars, Moon Mars, and Sun Mars midpoint. So that new moon actually hits a very, very sensitive part of her chart, because she has the North Node and the Ascendant in her natal chart on her Moon Mars and her Sun Mars midpoint. And so I suppose you could say that represents her assertiveness and her anger. I mean, I know she doesn't seem very assertive when she's in this campaign. She seems as if she's being controlled by other people and told what to do, but there must be some explanation for why she's so successful. But this new moon does hit an incredibly important point in her chart. Now, It's up to you how you want to interpret it. If you are a supporter of Harris, if you believe she's going to win, you could then say, well, here is the assertive, aggressive woman. I mean, aggressive, I don't mean that necessarily in a negative sense. The assertive woman, new moon, new beginning for her, it all works out. That's one way of looking at it, effective use of power. Another way of looking at it is an angry woman. A woman who is perhaps angry, but things aren't going her way. A woman who is angry because she has been defeated. It doesn't say she is going to be defeated. It's just saying angry because she's defeated. But I don't want to, at this stage, I don't want to tell you which way to go. I don't want to tell you how to look at this dial, how to interpret it. But whatever happens, that this North Node, this new moon, really does hit a very important point in Kamala Harris's chart. This is why we should be using midpoints, why we should be using semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. And that's it. That's all I've got to say for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to subscribe. Assuming you're not subscribed. If you are subscribed and you enjoyed the video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. Anyway, that's it. Thanks again for listening. Oh, and yes, if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.